Welcome to the Civil War Guru Show. My name is Steve Munson, and I am the Civil War Guru. And today I'm not in the photo because we got a new contraption that's handheld. And we got it on a pedestal here, and we haven't really kind of got it under control. So we're going to shoot and then just move from different positions. So we'll turn the camera off. Of course, my son will marry it all together. So what you have in front of here is a super rare, unheard of. Confederate stuff from Florida is just so rare. I can't tell you how rare it is. And this thing's so unusual. And what this is a 4-pound Coehorn mortar. And the origins, I assume it might be a Mexican War bringback or a War of 1812, but it has no markings other than a serial number 7 on the muzzle, which we'll show that. It's a 4-pound, as I said. The ball there is the original ball. It's 4-pound. And Kenny's my cameraman, so he's going to get up here and that's a 2-piece mold that made that, which is pretty neat. And so let me just give you a little history on this thing, because it's kind of exciting. And it's Western theater. As you know, we have the Battles of the Western Theater Museum here in Bardstown, Kentucky. And this particular display is going to go in a unit. I'll tell you at the end where it's going. It's pretty cool. So what this is a 4-pound Coehorn. Now, we talked about Florida. All right. This guy in the back there, that's Mr. John Martin. And he helped form the Marion County Light Artillery. And that was in Central Florida, Ocala. And it was actually, they organized on Amelia Island, which everybody in Florida is familiar with Amelia Island. And Marion County, Florida, folks, is Ocala. For all you guys there, this gentleman, Mr. Martin, captain, he went in as a captain and a colonel, and we'll get a little more in his info here in a second. So they formed this group in Amelia Island in 1861. Now, a little history on him. He was from Charleston, South Carolina. He went to Charleston Military Academy. And he actually migrated to Central Florida, Ocala, and bought 3,000 acres where Ocala is. So his family owned all of that in that area. So anyway, he was for states' rights, and he thought that the federal government was overtaxing him and yada, yada, yada. So, he was all for, states' rights and seeking independence because he thought that they were overtaxed and didn't have enough rights. So they formed this artillery, and he wanted to be artillery, I guess because he was around, the Charlestonians and the boys down in Savannah, the Chatham Artillery. So he loved artillery. Again, this piece of artillery is War of 1812, American, or it could be Mexican War, but somewhere a private casting, serial number 7, but it's magnificent shape. And it's got a little under a 3-inch bore and a 4-pound, and the projectile's a little under, just a hair under 3 inches. But this Martin guy, he was well educated, and he was a great organizer. So they formed the Florida Light Artillery, and they initially were down at St. Augustine and they were guarding the coast, and of course the Union was running up and down the coast and trying to find the weak spots, in the Florida area down there. So anyway, as it progressed in 61, they kind of were called up, and so they went and they actually were formed in the Army of Tennessee under Braxton Bragg. So they ended up with General Braxton Bragg. And he was down, Bragg was actually down in the Mobile area and moved up from there up to Chattanooga. And so he was encompassed in there. Well, We can fast forward to 1862, the invasion of Kentucky with General Braxton Bragg, and also General Kirby Smith. Well, they split the army of invasion, and half went, up the central. I call it 65 Highway 65 corridor, and the other one went up Highway 75 corridor. Kirby Smith went 75, and Braxton Bragg went out 65 north. And Bragg ended up in Bardstown, and Kirby Smith made actually the most decisive win for the Confederacy in the Battle of Richmond. Well, at the Battle of Richmond, Mr. Martin got wounded. And they actually, I've kind of researched this a little bit, and Brian Bush, a dear friend of mine, is the director at Perryville Battlefield. He said that they were in Perryville. Well, half of them was in Perryville, half of them with Kirby Smith. So anyway, this group, why do you have a 4-pound cannon? And it's very simple. Let's go back a little earlier. General Felix Zollicoffer at the Battle of Mill Springs. And these guys ended up in the winter of Kentucky. When you're in Kentucky in the winter, it's rain, snow, sleet, and on and on. Well, when you go to a battle and you go to a gunfight, and here's what the Confederates did. Confederates didn't have the manufacturing, so they took everything and anything that was in arsenals, captured, whatever, and that was what they fought with. And Zollicoffer put up a great fight at Mill Springs, but they had flintlock rifles, and it was raining, it was snowing, it was drizzling, it was sleeting, and he wouldn't fire. So, they carried what they had. And this particular Coehorn would fit in a limber box, it'd fit in a wagon, so it was easily movable. And people say, oh, well, that thing wouldn't do anything. Let me tell you what, you lob that 4-pound projectile in a gun emplacement and watch them run. So they took everything they had. And they took Mexican war cannons that they brought back, 6-pounders, 12-pounders, anything that would shoot. That was in the Confederate arsenal. So this particular cannon or mortar, should I call it, how do we connect it with the Florida connection? Well, it's funny. In Ocala, of course, after the war, and a funny thing about Martin is, Martin got wounded there at Battle of Richmond in Kentucky, and they said he put up a great fight. He was a gallant soldier, and they won the day. So, he was kind of a hero. So when he mended up, he ended up in the Confederate Congress for 2 years. And he still wanted to defend the Confederacy. So he ended up, and he joined with Robert E. Lee in the artillery. And he surrendered at Appomattox with Robert E. Lee. So after the war, they went back down to Ocala, and he has 3,000 acres, and a town was developing there. And they had all the veterans, and you had the United Confederate Veterans that started, I think, in 1889, 89 or 90. And they started having them reunions. Well, they had them at Ocala. They had them in Jacksonville. There's movies of it at Jacksonville. It was amazing how many showed up there. So this thing was in I think it was post-69, if I recall right, down in that Ocala area. Then after they all died off, it ended up in a American Legion post. And in the 1940s, this guy that I got it from, his father, had bought it. It was sitting outside, and it had it on a metal stand, and they wanted to put a real gun in front of the post, and so he ended up with this thing. And it was tucked away, and, I knew where it was, and, just... you get these guys to sell it, it's a tough thing. But anyway, so here it is. But it's a cool item. And we got this display, and we made this display for one particular reason. Now, this thing was attached to Bragg's army, invasion of Kentucky. Well, right now, every day, this minute, we're working on Bragg's headquarters in Perryville, Kentucky. And Bragg's headquarters is a brick building. It's a great, great facade. It was fallen in. It's called the Crawford House. And that's where he headquartered during the Battle of Perryville. And we're restoring it. And a friend of ours had bought it, and I'm not going to mention his name, we call him Dr. Ted. And we're going to have inside the Crawford House some good, authentic artifacts that go with the battles of the Western Theater in Perryville. So this is going to be one that's on display. So that's why it's set up like this. It's like a museum display. And you know, when people come to see a museum, they want to leave with an experience. They felt like they seen something that they hadn't seen before. And this is one of those things. And it's super rare. It's unbelievable rare. So yeah, I'm going to quit talking here. And Kenny Rogers is going to move up, and we're going to get a different shot. And then I'll tell you a little bit about that shot. All right, Kenny's repositioned the camera for us, and you can see a little better angle shot of the mortar. And I'm going to take off the muzzle cover, and hopefully you'll get that. Is it showing it, Kenny? Okay, there's the bore. This is the projectile, and Kenny's going to get up here. The only marking on this barrel is serial number 7. It's right there, and he'll get a close-up of that. All right, Kenny, we're going to go to the next position and get you guys a better shot. All right, there's a little close-up, and you can see that's made in a 2-piece mold, which is crude as hell, now that is Confederate made. The mortar might be older, but that is definitely time period Civil War. And that's, you know, crude as they did, but the Confederates had to make do with what they had. So there's the projectile for it. And like I said, it's a little under 3 inches, weighs 4 pounds, actually a hair over. All right, now we're going to move up on the serial number 7 so you can see that on the muzzle. All right, there's a shot you can actually see down into the tube. And I'm going to put the point. There's the serial number 7 right there above this ink pen. And that's the face of the mortar. And, you know, they had it plugged. And fortunately, that's what saved from being just totally rusted out. Water getting inside of it. But it's super condition. And it did have, the gentleman was telling me that his father, they'd put, I don't know, a quarter pound of powder in it and blow stuff through it in 4th of July. So they did run a stick welder around the back where the barrel meets the pivoting part of the trunnions. Just so it had he thought it had a hairline crack, so that it would still be safe to shoot. But, you know, we definitely don't want anybody to shoot anything. All right, now we're going to get Kenny to move the camera. That's a good shot, Kenny. All right, here's a good photo. All right, so actually it's a steel engraving of ended up being a Colonel John Martin. And he lived, another little footnote on him, he lived I think until the 20s. And his son that he had some children, and his son was governor of Florida, which is just a little footnote for you. But this is the gentleman that helped form the Marion County Light Artillery, which ended up, I think it was called in the 3rd Florida. That's the division they were in. And so, but that's a good rendering of him. And so I want you to, kind of put a face on what you're looking at. All right, Kenny, let's get a couple close-ups of different things on the mortar. All right, there's a little plaque, to identify what you're looking at there. And, everything has to be identified. All right, and I also want to mention that when we were putting a display together for the Crawford House, this thing weighs about 150 pounds. This tube does. So I'm going to kind of just move the camera back. I don't know. Now, don't get dizzy on me. All right, back that off, Kenny. Just see if you can back it off a little bit so you can get the farewell shot here. That's good. Just stop it right there. All right, that's, again, we want you to know what you're looking at. And, I take a lot of pleasure in doing this because, anytime you can bring something out of the woodwork, save history, and this would be a great addition for the Confederate headquarters at the Battle of Perryville, the Crawford House. And let me tell you guys need to come because there'll be some memorabilia in there for the Confederate side, and there'll also be some memorabilia in there for the Union side. General Bragg was the Confederate general, and General Don Carlos Buell was the Union commander. And another, I have to say this out loud, and with Kenny Rogers next to me, our ancestors, Benjamin Franklin Cheatham, General Benjamin Franklin Cheatham, was there with Leonidas Polk, and we got relations there, and he was in this building also. So this is kind of a hit home, your ancestors, and kind of perpetuate some history here. So from the old Civil War guru, please, subscribe to what we're doing on our channel. Make it grow. It doesn't cost anything. And if you need something looked at, evaluate it, we can do that for you too. It doesn't cost you nothing. And again, I have to say this also. We do the classic and antique cars, mostly Corvettes and older cars. I've owned 7 Duesenbergs, and that'll raise your eyebrows. And also planes. We do World War II and biplanes also. I've had P-51s and Stearmans and on and on. So, I'm going to leave you with the final words is, this represents the great state of Florida. And we get, at our Civil War Museum in Bardstown, we get a lot of Florida tourists. And they enjoy it. And it's hard to find Florida artifacts. So here's one, new to the market, be on display. And so from the old Civil War guru and Kenny Rogers, y'all have a great day.